Howard, how's it going?
Hello there, Brian. How are you doing, sir?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you very much for your time. I imagine you're quite busy with the book coming out soon, so I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me.
Oh yeah, of course, no worries. I love doing stuff like this. So
Uh-huh. Brilliant. So
yeah.
obviously this is it's kind of a re-release of one of the stories in the book, but it's got some quite a few extras in there. I think it's six in total. No, six extra stories. But I want
Yes.
to. But obviously, I hadn't read the first one, so I want to kind of focus on that first of all, and then kind of
Okay.
link it to the other ones if that's okay. Um,
Sure.
So obviously this book's been out in the wild for quite a while, so you know kind of what people think about it, and kind of a lot of people know kind of how it subverts horror tropes and those kind of things. So, but because I hadn't read it before, I want to kind of ask you. You've probably been asked this before, but I can't. I need to kind of know what it was. I felt like there was something had been eating you up that you wanted to do with this specific subgenre, to kind of tell it the way that you did. So I'm quite curious, what was it? Was it something that happened to you personally in a house or something? Or was it something that you just were fed up of? You had a kind of a chip on your shoulder about certain kind of very generic haunted house stories. What was it that kind of sparked the idea that you wanted to write this specific type of haunted house story, if we can call it that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was just a number of different factors that all came together to make the book what it is. I think first of all, it's just my general outlook on horror and writing in general. Like if I'm gonna do something, I want to find a unique angle on it. And so a lot of the time that does involve subverting tropes and things like that. So that's generally just my creative approach in general. Um, and you're right. There were things like, the way kids are portrayed in horror. Kids are often written as like mini adults versus actual children. And I love the idea of kind of lampooning that with a kid who is like kind of a baby Stewie from Family Guy type,
Exactly.
kind of
That was
like,
exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah.
who thinks he's a genius, but he's actually just like, or, you have the weird kid who's only pretending to be a weird kid, who's actually quite precocious and smart, but he thinks he's a genius and he's really also just a little kid at times too.
Uh-huh.
Um, so you have that. And then there was also back in the early 2000s, there was a coffee table book called Post Secret where people would like write in with like and share their secrets. And one was, I love one of my children. So that was a really big inspiration for the book as well. So it was like all these elements came together when I was writing it.
Uh-huh. It sounds like you were very, very keen to kind of lampoon it without actually kind of making fun of the genre, because you really do kind of lean into a lot of the horror aspects, horror tropes in the book. But you do really well with this kind of very dry, tongue-in-cheek lampooning. But you've got to be very careful with that, because it can either work perfectly well, or it can pull you out of the kind of the frightening bits, or it can feel too
Yeah.
kind of tongue in cheek, too over the top, and it doesn't play in your favor. So I'm quite curious, because I felt it worked really, really well, and kind
Thank
of,
you.
even though I couldn't feel that ending coming, I won't give it away to anyone that's not ready yet, but it lent itself to make the ending make more sense, if you know what I mean, because it was kind of the kind of the comedy and the irony, and also a poignant message at the same time, that it all kind of led to that ending. So I'm quite curious how you approached kind of the lampooning without overdoing it, or without not doing it enough to reach
Uh,
that
you know,
ending.
well, I think I overdo everything, and I find if you overdo everything, and then you can go back and figure out where to tone it down. So that's more of my process. As I'm writing, I'm just having fun. I am not writing super intentionally a lot of the time. In a way, I write from more of like a rhythmic standpoint. I get into the story and I just kind of feel my way through it, and I just have a good time. And then I come back and I'm like, okay, how do I make this into something people will want to read?
Uh-huh.
When I turn around and look back at what I've done, basically. And so, certainly, yeah, you mentioned the ending. There is a pretty a big swing taken at the end, right? And it's kind of unorthodox. And when I was writing the book, there were two possible endings in my mind. That was one of them, and then the other one was something that was much more like kind of playing it safe. But I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to do this because this feels right, and people will either respond to it or don't.
Yeah.
or not, and like I've had other stuff I've written that people didn't particularly respond to, or that, sorry, a small number of readers absolutely loved it, and then more people who read it were like, what the hell is this shit? You know? And
Yeah.
so, it's, you got to take risks. And I'd rather look back at a book I wrote and go, well, I took the risks I wanted to take, and I'm proud of that, than to just play it safe and do something that I feel is paint by numbers. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather be memorable than anything else, right? Like, I want people, like, even people who hated the ending, and there's plenty of those people on Goodreads I've heard. I don't go look at the reviews or anything, but I've heard that there's a sizable number of people who just really hated the ending and thought it was stupid. And I'm like, well, you know what? You're talking about it though.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And
So,
this is a perfect case of don't judge a book by its cover, because I think a lot of the people, a lot of the hate that I've seen were complaining that they saw the name, the title of the book, man, fuck this house, and they expected something completely different. It didn't live up to their expectations because it wasn't like the title. How much? I'm quite curious. What kind of brainstorming did you do to come up with the title, and and because it's so easy to judge a book by a cover and its title, so that must have. How did you come up with that kind of how did you come up with that title, just to kind of try and not piss people off like they have got been pissed off, but at the same time kind of express more or less how the story was going to go?
yeah. So I guess, well, my first question is for anyone who saw the title and then found that the story wasn't what they were expecting. My question is like, what were you expecting? I'm honestly curious to find out what you were expecting out of a
Yeah.
book called Man, Fuck This House. And so, yeah, as far as how I came up with the title, it just popped into my head one day, and it started as a Twitter joke. I just like tweeted like this would be a really great title for a haunted house book, and a bunch of other people were like, yes, it would. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go write that. And the original version of it was much more like the original version I had in my head was much more of like a kind of a spoof. It was like a fratty ghost comedy set like at a college frat house, kind of like a Van Wilder, but with ghosts,
Okay.
essentially. And that was the original book I was planning to write. And then I decided, I just decided, like, I was like, no, I feel like I want to go down a different road with this. And, I kind of decided. And the other thing I decided, right, I was very inspired by the movie The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, actually.
Really?
How, you ask? Because there's no chainsaw massacring in this book. Well, that movie is, when it came out, people were like, oh, it's so gory, it's so blah, blah, blah. And like all the gore, except for when the hitchhiker cuts himself in the van,
It's
is in
off.
blood.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the only blood in the entire movie. And so I decided I was going to write a book called Man, Fuck This House, where the only profanity is in the title. And at one point, one
Didn't
character
think about
says
it.
the
Yeah.
title. Other than that, there is not a hell, a damn, a shit, anything in the text.
Yeah, not even from
There's
the
at
son
one point a
who would
character
be,
says
you would
HE
think it
double
would
hockey
be.
sticks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not even the son who you'd think would probably enjoy saying a
Yeah.
few expletives. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So I decided to, I was like, I could write this book with this title and make it filthy and whatever and like sexual or whatever. And I said, nope, I'm going to go the complete opposite direction. It's funny because I've had people in book groups say like, people are looking for like, YA recommendations for like teenage readers or something.
Yeah.
And I've had a number of people go, despite the title, this is a very clean book, actually.
Yeah.
That's actually good for kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's just a word. It's literally just an arbitrary sound that we've assigned meaning to. So, please
Uh,
stop clutching your pearls and give it a shot.
no, no, definitely. I mean, it's
Yeah.
funny you said there that you were inspired by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was the last thing I was thinking. What it really did
Right?
remind me of, I imagine it was completely by happenstance, is a Netflix miniseries called The Watchers. I don't know if you saw that.
Watchers,
The
no,
Watchers, where
is
they
that?
buy a new house out in the sticks, out in like this neighborhood. It's
Oh, is
got very
that?
different themes. Different. There's no kind. It's not haunted or anything like that. But a lot of things kind of took me down that kind of same rabbit hole. Yeah,
Oh, is
very
that the
much
family
so.
that gets like weird letters from someone
That's
who
the one.
says
That's
they're
the one.
like
Yeah,
the?
yeah, yeah. That's the one.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I did watch that. That was excellent,
yeah.
based on a true
Just gave me
story.
that kind of that kind of vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very weird show, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Apparently, there's supposed to be they're making a sequel or something to that. I can't see that how that would work, but yeah,
I guess they're gonna fictionalize it because they did get into a lot of kind of. I felt like they were getting into kind of more answer territory in the series and
yeah,
really getting away from like the real story, which is okay. because
Uh-huh.
it's fine to use that as a jumping off point. But yeah, that was I like that series a lot. That's exactly the kind of vibe that I think the book has. Yeah, you move into a new house and it's kind of disorienting, right? It's an unfamiliar space, even though it's now yours. And then there's that period of making it yours. Oh, sorry, I've been under the weather a little bit. But there's you have boxes everywhere, right? And then you're slowly like making the place yours by like putting up your art and like putting things in drawers and doing this and doing that and making new memories there, right? And eventually it's like it becomes yours, but there's a period where it's not really yours, but you're living there.
Uh-huh. I'm quite curious also about the kind of the themes of the family and the isolation. I mean, this was a lot more serious, this part of the story, but it felt kind of like that the Haskins family, their physical isolation kind of mirrors their deeper kind of emotional disconnect before they even reach this house. Was that something that you wanted to amplify with this distance, taking them away from kind of the city, taking them into the suburbs? And did this kind of the idea of emotional isolation come first? With the setting reflecting it, or did the setting come first and then that evolved into kind of a metaphor for the family dynamics?
That's a good question. So essentially, anytime you have a haunted house book, you pretty much have to have the family moving into a new house, right?
Mhm.
And you have to have a reason for them to move in. And then, yeah, the isolation is definitely part of it, right? It makes more sense from a storytelling perspective, it's easier to convey that if they're moving from one city to another, for example, like, moving somewhere unfamiliar. And the other thing was this was a novella, so I was kind of limited by space. So I decided I didn't want to have a bunch of neighbor characters I had to figure out and introduce and work into
Yeah,
the plot
bring
somehow.
lasagna
I
and
want,
cookies
you know,
over
I
and
wanted
stuff.
to
Yeah,
have it be like, oh yeah, we got this house and there's like a national forest on one side and like a bunch of empty houses on the other. And this was also written around the time when like, a lot of houses in the country were being bought up by groups like BlackRock and also overseas investors. And there were like a lot of like, if you've seen Barbarian, there's like the Airbnb
right.
thing everywhere now, and houses being owned by people who don't live there. And there was a lot of like housing market was so weird at one point around like right after COVID, where it was like we had a bunch of empty houses that weren't on the market it was just kind of weird. Um, so I like kind of played into that a little bit. But yeah, you're right. The isolation was intentional for sure.
Hmm. And then also, we mentioned there a little bit about the family, especially Damien, who's kind of like this Stewie Griffin type of character now, very articulate, volatile, and strangely mature, but he doesn't say any expletives like you said. I'm quite curious though. The relationship between Sabrina and Damien, Sabrina's the mother, and Damien the son. Why did you think that dynamic would work better here to kind of for them to clash the way they do and how that relates to the house and how the house relates to them without giving anything about what's going on in the house away?
Oh, okay. Wow, that is a interesting question, and I'm trying to think of the best way to answer it. So the dynamic, but I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the dynamic between them was inspired by that book Post Secret,
Mhm.
The Secret of I Love One of My Children, and that was where Sabrina's character came from. And I thought about like, okay, so what would happen if you had a very precocious, emotionally mature child who understood that his mother didn't love him the same way his mother loved his sister. And, how would he respond to that, right? And so it's kind of like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where he's leaning more and more into the things that, she expects of him. And so that dynamic I thought was really, really interesting. And yeah, the way it interacts with the house, I don't think I can really talk about that without
Yeah.
spoilers, unfortunately, but hopefully this is just piquing your audience's interest.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Uh-huh. And also, can we talk a little bit about the house?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't just contain the story; it shapes the story in a way. We can say that much, no?
Yeah, I
Um,
think so.
and it feels very much a character in the book. Was it? I mean, it's difficult in itself to kind of use words to describe the locations, but was it even more of a gauntlet you set yourself to kind of describe this house that felt more like another character in the book rather than just a physical location where this family suddenly turned up and were discovering things there.
Yeah, I mean, I think places can have personality, and some of that is, I think that is mostly just like the human impulse to impose sentience on things that are not sentient. But I think it's fun to play with for sure, and I think we've all kind of ascribed personalities to like, our cars, for example, or something like that. And houses similar. So it just seemed like a fun idea to play with.
Uh-huh. And I'm quite curious why you decided for the father and the family to play such a back seat in this story compared to the rest of the family. Was there any specific
Well,
reason why you wanted to pull kind of like the paternal figure out of the family most of the
well,
story?
partly because like it is a novella, and there's only so much space and time to spend, right? And so because the novella is about the relationship between Sabrina and her son, and then the house, the father and daughter are both essentially, side characters, and so, and also I think it's helpful to have, one character who's experiencing a haunting, right? Sabrina's experiencing a haunting, right? And having the father kind of be more absent a little bit, right? Because also he has a new job and things like that, and he has other things preoccupied his mind that are important. Um, but I didn't want them experiencing it together because this is really about her, the house, and the kid.
Okay. But what I really really appreciate about this book more than anything else was the fact that there's obviously something going on with the house, and I was already getting interested in that, and then all of a sudden, because of the son's relationship with the mother, he sees that the mother's worried about something, and he wants to take advantage of that as best possible he can. So that kind of led to two parallel storylines almost, and I was really really eager to see how those two storylines would kind of join together, how they would come together. Um, because he is such an evil little chap, he could have done all kinds of things. I mean, you said that you like to kind of think of the worst possible scenarios when you're writing and then maybe reel it back in a bit. But I'm quite curious if there was anything that Damien came up with, these pranks that he came up with, that either you or your editor or publisher said we can't have a 10-year-old doing this kind of thing, or did you get pretty much a free rein to let him do what we get to see him do in the book?
No, I got complete free reign.
Yeah.
And really I don't think there was anything different I had him doing. This was all, essentially, a lot of the stuff in my first draft is literally still here in the book. From a beat standpoint, they're fairly identical. So no, I never really had Damien becoming more extreme or anything like that because that was not how I pictured the character. Um, he's someone, again, without getting too far into spoilers, which I think
Yeah.
we're dancing up to here. He is, he's a child, and children don't understand the consequences of things, but they only have certain capabilities, and their imaginations work in funny ways. And so that's kind of what Damien is and is doing.
Uh-huh. And was it always there? Was it always your idea to have kind of Damien as kind of like how to say it, kind of the foil for what's actually going on in the house? Or was that something that just kind of came organically while you were writing what was going on in the house?
That was more organic, yeah. So I
Yeah.
generally start with a general situation and then character, and then I throw the characters into the situation and kind of see what happens. And so all like generally like thematically stuff like that, that all emerges organically as I'm writing. Uh,
Hmm. Uh-huh. And then I actually absolutely love the kind of the last 40, 50 pages because it's just everything gets thrown at you from all different angles. That must. How did you manage to pull that off? Obviously, I don't want to give anything away there, but
sure.
I'm guessing maybe you reverse engineer that maybe a little bit, and then kind of had to streamline it and just know which perspective to switch to, like switching to one camera from one camera to another. That must have been really complicated, that last kind of 40, 50 pages, no?
Not really, actually. So
No?
weirdly, no, there was no planning involved. I just kind of like went, I just went for it. So like I told you, I write by rhythm most of the time, and so luckily, that is one of my talents for sure. Is that I understand, like I intuitively can feel the rhythm of a book and know what things have to happen when, and it just kind of comes out. I'm not saying I'm the best at everything. There's plenty of things I'm not good at. Again,
Yeah.
check the one-star reviews on Goodreads. You'll find people who think I'm bad at a lot of things, but that is one of my things I think is a true talent of mine is that I understand the rhythm intuitively. And
Yeah.
so when I write a scene like, those last 50 pages or whatever, um, I think essentially everything that happens in those last 50 pages was in the first draft, and really,
Really?
and future drafts
That's
were
great.
only about refining like phrasing and things like that. But even from like an action to action, beat to beat standpoint, it's almost identical to my first
Yeah.
draft.
What was that? But those last 50 pages are just it's
Yeah.
just frenetic all the way through. I was reading on the train going to work and I just couldn't sit still. And that's just so,
Nice.
so
Oh,
good.
I
It's
love
nice, nice.
that.
Yeah, it's great, great.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's fun.
So listen,
Love it.
obviously this is, I don't want to talk too much anything, and I don't want to talk about the book anymore because that story, sorry, because I don't, like you said, we're kind of teetering just on kind of things that I don't want to give it away at all.
It's okay. It's hard. It's hard. It's
It's
hard.
really hard, I know, yeah, especially with books, more so than films, actually. But what I'm quite curious is this is now released with another six stories. Um, some of them quite similar, some of them quite different. I'm quite curious if did you kind of handpick specifically the type of stories that you wanted to kind of go thematically with the main story, or was it kind of a bit more random than you kind of wanted to give things a bit of a mix to give people a bit of a different style after reading that story?
So good question. So I worked with my editor at Blackstone, Brendan, to figure out what stories we wanted to include in this. So I started by making a list of every short story I've ever written and sending it to him. And then and with a log line basically. And then, we kind of like worked from there and figured out what the best stories were to include in this. And I think generally, we want to include stories that had some, like within anthology, sorry, not within anthology, with a collection, there generally needs to be some sort of through line.
Yeah,
To an extent, like part of the advantage of a collection is that you can give people kind of different moods and different tones and things like that. But it needs to work together to some extent,
yeah.
right? And so I think that's what we tried to figure out how to do was pick stories that paired in interesting ways with the main narrative. So yeah, we'll see how people respond to them for sure.
No, no, I mean, it's got a great mix. I mean, there's certain kind of, without giving anything away, in the rushes certainly felt very much like it shared a lot in common with the main story because of this relationship with the mother and the daughter, for example, those kind of things. But those kind of things you were looking for, or was that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think generally stories with strong emotional ties are things that I like to include. So I think when with the stories that we included, we are looking for things that had um, interesting emotional hooks, basically. And I think In the Rushes is, a different view on a parent and child relationship than in the first story, right?
Sure.
And it serves as kind of a counterpoint to that. The Tire Swing, the last story that closes the collection, also serves as like really more of a counterpoint to Man, Fuck This House. So that was absolutely intentional to include stories that sort of were in conversation with each other, you could say,
Yeah.
that offer different perspectives on different things. And then, of course, we have some that are just kind of like curveballs out of left field as well.
Yeah, I particularly loved Line of Sight because I know that you kind of said it was Supernatural meets The Shield, and I've been a huge fan of
Yeah.
both of those series, so that was just like
Yes.
this is for
Love
me.
it.
Yeah, uh-huh. Exactly. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah,
So
that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed. It's funny that story was completely rewritten. I wrote the original draft like 8 years ago or something like that, and then always wanted to come back to it and figure out how to make the story work. And then this one was a complete rewrite into what is pretty much a novelette. But yeah, I love the Shield. I definitely like Supernatural. I feel weird saying that just because I know there's so many super fans out there that have seen like
yeah.
all 20 million seasons and will be like, oh yeah, well, blah, 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 like, so I'm a
No.
little paranoid about getting called out, but like I've watched a lot of episodes and enjoyed
Yeah, I've
everything.
watched them. Yeah, I
Um,
think I patted off towards the end, but yeah, I watched kind of the first 10, 11 seasons. I definitely, yeah, I watched all of
yeah,
those. Yeah, and the
yeah, but
Shield is
anyway,
just.
yeah,
I
definitely.
don't think anything beats the Shield. I don't think Sutter's done anything better than the Shield in my opinion. I think it was his best series. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 for sure. I just want, yeah, I'm trying
I
to
mean,
think
Sons of
of
Anarchy is great as well,
Sons
but
of Anarchy. I
Shield is
mean, Yeah, Sutter wasn't the showrunner on The Shield, though. He was only a writer, I believe, right?
Only writer though, yeah.
This Sean Ryan was the showrunner on The Shield.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I really liked his Chicago Code that only lasted a season. That was kind of cool. Um, but yeah, I don't know what Kurtzer's even done since Sons of Anarchy ended, actually.
I
Uh,
don't know. I know that he
yeah.
did that film with that boxing film. What was it called? I can't remember what it's called. It's like a Rocky style film. I can't remember what it was called now though.
Oh, okay.
But
Huh.
they and it's quite decent actually. Though, yeah, it's called Jake
Oh.
Gyllenhaal's in it. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head though. But yes,
Was
that's
that
it.
just called The Fighter?
No,
Is that that one?
no, I can't remember.
Oh wait, that was
I'll
the Mark Wahlberg film, was The Fighter, right?
yeah, that's right. No, no, this is the other one. Southpaw, Southpaw. Sorry, it was called Southpaw.
Southpaw. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah,
Got it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That was
Um,
a good movie.
yeah. Anyway, though, I really did like, I obviously love The Shield, love Sons of Anarchy too, but anyway, um, that was a really fun idea to play with. I like the idea of like, an elite squad of crooked cops because you get to like, you get to write law enforcement and all the advantages as a writer that come with that. For example, you have people who have authority, they have guns, they have access to databases and things, and you can do all kinds of things with that, right? But because they're an elite squad with little oversight and they're also crooked, I don't actually have to know police procedures in order to
Yeah.
write them.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of
Okay. Yeah,
it's like having my cake and eating it too, basically. And I love the
exactly.
idea of, when like Vic Mackey and team running into some sort of supernatural occurrence, right? So that was a really a fun story, and I hope people dig it.
I mean that's the kind of movie that I'd like to see because we don't see many. There have been a couple, but they're not really kind of like that. I'd love to see kind of like some kind of dirty cops taking on the supernatural. We've not really seen anything like that in a movie or a TV series. That would make for some really good a really good movie
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Well, we've been pitching that. So so far three of the stories in the collection have been optioned,
Right.
and so which is very cool. And I'm hoping that becomes one of them at some point. My agent shopping around. If when the book comes out next week, if it makes a lot of noise, then that will really put us in a position where perhaps we can sell line of sight because I really do think it could be a series. Honestly, that's how we were
Yeah.
trying to pitch it is, this could be a really awesome show on like an effects or something like that.
Yeah.
That could
Yeah.
go on for
Definitely.
like 6 or 7 seasons, maybe, because
Yeah.
you've got a monster of the week thing that you could easily do. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I tried to add some hints at a larger world in there. So
No, it could work. Definitely. Yeah. I'd like to see that. Definitely. Yeah. But listen, so I mean, obviously, you said it's coming out next week, the book. I understand that you're going to be taking it on the road, I think. No, is that right? I think a friend of yours and mine, Phil Fracassi's on the road with his new book that just came
yes,
out today as well. I think you sent
yep,
him a version of this book as well to read, to take
yes,
on the road.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So can you tell us?
I'm reading his new one myself right now, The Autumn Springs Retirement Home
Oh,
Massacre,
it's
which comes
fantastic.
out
I loved it.
today, by the
It comes
way.
out today. It's fantastic, a fantastic read. Yeah, I loved it so much. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, can tell us a little bit about where people can catch up with you and get hold of the book while you're
Absolutely.
there.
So, yeah, if you go to my website, brianasmanbooks.com, or if you go to my Linktree Brian Asman, you can find links to everything about the tour, about the book, all that stuff. Yeah, Philip and I are doing a bunch of dates, starting with this Saturday at Mysterious Galaxy here in San Diego at 4 p.m. And then next week, we're going to be in Arizona at the Poison Pen. And then we're doing an event sponsored by Books on the Bosque in Albuquerque called Fright Night, and that has an absolutely stacked lineup of horror authors. It's Nat Cassidy, Clay McLeod Chapman, Ramona Emerson, Jennifer Gavon, who else? Keith Rawson, C.J. Lee, T. Kingfisher. I'm probably forgetting someone, but yeah, it's just a super stacked
That's
lineup.
crazy. That's brilliant.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be great. So if you're in the Albuquerque area or can get there, I highly recommend you check out if you go to booksonthebosque.com or check out their Instagram or my Instagram, you can find it. Um,
Huh?
it's going to be a super fun event. And then I'm doing a few events here in San Diego the following weeks. Doing one at October 18th, the North Park Book Festival. I'll be signing. I'm doing one on the 12th with Jonathan Mayberry at Artifact Books in Encinitas. the 29th of October in Escondido at the Barnes& and Noble there. I'm doing an event with Kirsten White, which will be really cool. And then Philip and I are going to Louisiana. So we're really hitting the road again, and we're
Yeah.
doing the Louisiana Book Festival, and then we're doing an event at Octavia Books in New Orleans with Christina Henry. And her new one, The Place Where They Buried Your Heart, I actually just got that one, which I'm really looking forward to reading after I finish Philip's book.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, just a bunch of cool events. And I'm also doing a virtual event that everyone can attend with Gibson's bookstore in New Hampshire, I believe. And so all that info is if you go to my website, brianasmanbooks.com, there's a book tour link at the top, or again, linktree /Brian Asman, and you can find all that info.
Brilliant. Well, I'll make sure to add all of the links down below this video once it goes live and in the article, so make sure that everyone can get there easily. Listen, Brian,
Thank you
thank you so much for
kindly.
your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Wish you the best of luck with the release and the tour. And
Fantastic. Yeah, this has been a great time. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you,
yeah,
Howard.
been really good to speak to you. Have a great time. Hope to speak to you again sometime soon, whether it's about a film project that comes through or the next book or whatever. I hope I look forward to speaking to you sometime soon.
Absolutely. I always happy to come on.